Hello, we're Chris and Lindsey Phillips. We are over here in Northern Ireland, where I am the team leader for Open Doors, and Lindsey's a speech and language therapist. We have 3 amazing children: Micah, who's 8, Jude is 5, and Ember is 2.
Jude, our second child, who's just turned 5, he has a condition called Emmanuel Syndrome. Emmanuel Syndrome is kind of like Down syndrome in that it's caused by the presence of an extra chromosome. It's quite rare, there's only a few hundred in the world that have it, and it's characterised by severe learning disability and severe language delay and motor skill issues as well.
When Jude was born, he had some breathing difficulties, so was in neonatal, and it was whilst he was in hospital that doctors began to notice a few things about him that they wanted to investigate, and through that process they did some kind of genetic testing, for which we were obviously left wondering what was going to happen, what that all meant, and eventually then we were given a genetic code for Jude. No name of the syndrome, no real guidance or information about what that meant, and we're kind of left really to go away and Google that. And on the way home from the hospital, we sat in a cafe and discovered this syndrome with the name Emmanuel, which was, as you can imagine, an interesting moment for us as we began to then read and see photos and discover a little bit about what other children around the world had been kind of going through with Jude's syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that first year was a bit of a process in accepting that for both of us. When we looked up the genetic number and saw that it was Emmanuel Syndrome, I think we were in a bit of denial that that's actually what our Jude had, and it maybe took a little while before we properly accepted that. I think there was always a hope there that they'd maybe got it wrong or things would be different, because what we'd read on paper for that syndrome was felt really hard. I think accepting that and that journey was maybe easier for me. I had started to connect in with some other families on Facebook, and started to hear some of their stories and see some of their children, and as we started to progress through that first year and realise that the milestones that your baby are meant to be meeting, Jude was falling more and more behind. That support network through that group really, really helped me. But I know that I was a bit further on in that than you.
Yeah, I think I maybe didn't want to engage too much with any of that. I found it hard to read the material, to look at pictures, just to process that. And I think because Jude was still so young, so small, it didn't feel real. It wasn't really a thing to be dealt with at that stage. And probably took me a good year really to begin to start to process it, and for us to even be able to talk about it openly. Yeah,
I mean, Chris talked about how in those early first days the doctors had started to do tests and comment on some abnormal features and things like that, and those first few days were really quite daunting, I think, for both of us. I remember Jude was maybe 3 days old, and they'd arranged for the geneticist to come and see him, and I remember back in my room on maternity ward just mulling over all my emotions, feeling really quite flat and low, feeling frustrated with God maybe a little, and I felt prompted to spend time with God, but I felt quite annoyed at the same time. And I remember saying to God in my head, right, God, well, I'm going to listen to you, but you've got to lay it out on a plate. And I thought, I'm just going to open my Bible app on my phone. So we'd already named our son Jude, and the verse for the day on my Bible app was from Jude, verse 1. And it was in the message version, so this is just how it came up on my phone that day. Relax, everything's going to be all right. Rest, everything's coming together. Open your hearts, love is on the way. And that really hit me right then. And I suppose through that hard first year, that kept being a motto that we came back to. And I think whenever you read all this stuff about a syndrome, and you hear all these things on paper about what your child will or will not do, it doesn't take into account all the things that they can do and they will be able to do, all the birthdays that you'll enjoy, the times with family, what they will find funny, what they'll laugh at, and that love that you'll experience through that relationship with your child and those around. So, it was a hard journey. It wasn't always easy. It wasn't that pasted everything in positivity, but it was definitely a real word from God, I think, in those early days that we kept coming back to, that actually it's not about what he will do, it's about knowing love in that process, and that's been a real big part of our journey, I think. Absolutely,
and the thing of love being on the way is something that's never stopped, that thing of love being this blooming, blossoming, unconditional emotion that just continues to change and adapt to what's needed, and I think we've seen that, felt that. I mean, that happens with all our children, but there's something about Jude and the experience we've been through, and learning to parent Jude and how we see him and how we respond to him has been that kind of developing and growing, changing love, which has been fascinating, really, to experience. I think for me in those early days, I really did struggle with that sense of accepting and coping with, this is not how I would want things to be. And it was really then kind of the following Christmas, just as we considered the word Emmanuel, and the syndrome isn't named after anything spiritual at all, but for me suddenly I had that realization as we dwelt on that term of God with us, and how Christ came into our mess, and when things don't look like how the world would have them, or how we might choose for things to be, actually that's exactly where God is present. That's exactly where Emmanuel comes into that mess. And I really had a really profound moment actually for me, where I just realised that it's not about my perception and my desire for things to be just sorted the way I want them to be, that actually every day Jude reminds me that God's right there when things aren't straightforward. And that's been a real blessing, a real learning for me. And then also we've just been able to then go on that journey with others, and we've seen others then respond to our story, and been really blessed by people who've come alongside us and have walked that with us, maybe because they've been through similar things themselves, and also been blessed by some really great kind of health practitioners who have been really supportive. But what about people kind of who've in church and things that have walked with us?
Yeah, I mean, just to say, I'm a speech therapist, as Chris said, and by the time Jude came along, I'd worked for many years with children with complex needs. So, I had a pretty good grasp of what it was like for families, and had kind of been part of that care. But I think you never really understand what it's like to parent a child with needs until you've walked in those shoes. And I think through our this journey with Jude, we have gravitated towards people who just know, and that has been a real support. Like Chris said, we have known such wonderful support in our family and our friends and our church community, but some people just know, and they can say things without saying things at all, and just knowing that others have been through what you're going through and experienced the same things that you've experienced really has gone such a long way for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you find people that you can be honest with and you can be open with, and that makes a big difference. And perhaps the church is a wonderful place to be when we have struggles, but we're not always that good at admitting it, and not always that good at opening up. And sometimes it feels like you don't think others will understand, and it's an easy thing just to deal with it yourself. But we found actually when we have been vulnerable and there's been people we can talk to, it's been a real blessing. And I think maybe the church does have a way to go, like our church, or the church in general, just to work out how do we journey with people, parents and families with kids with additional needs, that actually there's so much to be picked up from both sides in terms of how we learn and grow together. There's a dear lady connected with our church who really said that actually Jude is as much a blessing to our church as any of us can be to him. Just the idea that he can teach us so much, and that's certainly our prayer for him growing up in church, that he will not just find a place, not just that he will be accepted, but he will teach others by the way he journeys into faith, whatever that looks like for him, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah, I think as well, Jude, whilst some days are far from heavenly, I think sometimes the condition that he has, and just the what that means for his life, almost points to heaven, and that whole tension between one day but not yet. And we know for Jude that one day he will be restored and not have these limitations, but actually for now he does. And I think he is the biggest example for us some days of how to keep going when things are tough, totally. And to be determined and to still find joy in life. He's such a joyful child, which is so inspiring, and he brings joy to us when even we don't feel like we maybe are quite there. But yeah,
I mean, no more so than when last year during lockdown, at bath time, he suddenly kind of took off and took steps across the bathroom, and it was just maybe 2 or 3, which resulted in incredible joy and celebration. A few weeks later, did the same thing again, and then took off around the house, and an incredible answer to prayer, completely out of the blue, beyond our expectations. And there was this boy overachieving and doing it all because of his own determination. So what a lesson to learn.
Yeah, I mean, we never knew if he would walk. We had worked with physio for years on things that were just so hard for him, and actually just in his own time he took it all on, and he showed us that those things that you weren't sure about or you doubted about in me, I can do it. So we've had some real encouraging times with him, and we are just loving watching him grow and learn. He's just had his first year in school this year, which has been lovely, but another journey to get to that point. But I don't think we would have it any other way. I think our journey with Jude has been painful. We have cried so many tears and known such grief and pain through it all. It's not been easy at times, but the things that we've learned about God through it, and the love, like we've talked about, the love that we've known from Jude and in our own family and from each other, or from other people, to support us, has been so valuable.
So that's our story. I don't know if that helps in any way, but it's been a pleasure to be able to share it with you, and whatever you're going through, we hope that encourages you. And thanks for listening. God bless.